In April 1946, as the dust of World War II was still settling, a quiet meeting took place that would set the stage for a century of tension. The United States, fresh from its victory over the Axis powers, made a secret and startling offer to the Kingdom of Denmark. The price? $100 million in gold. The product? Greenland. At the time, Denmark was a nation in recovery, its economy shattered by years of Nazi occupation. To a struggling European power, $100 million, roughly $1.5 billion in today's money, was a king's ransom. But the Danes didn't see a real estate deal. They saw their heritage, 200 years of history, and their national pride. They said no. Fast forward 73 years. In 2019, what was once a secret diplomatic overture became a global firestorm. The idea returned, not in a hushed office, but in the loud, brash arena of modern politics. When Denmark's prime minister called the suggestion absurd, the U.S. president didn't just back down, he canceled a state visit and called the response nasty. The world laughed. Late-night comedians mocked the idea of buying a country, but behind the jokes lay a cold, hard reality. America's obsession with Greenland isn't a punchline. It is a calculated, decades-long strategic necessity. Why does the most powerful nation on Earth keep trying to acquire a frozen island with only 56,000 people? Because Greenland isn't just ice. It is a forward military platform. It is the front door to the Arctic, and it sits on the very resources that the superpowers of the 21st century will fight wars over. To understand the obsession, we have to go back to the Cold War. In the 1950s, American military planners looked at the globe and realized that the shortest path for a Soviet nuclear bomber to hit New York or Chicago wasn't across the Atlantic, it was directly over the North Pole. Greenland was the ultimate high ground. If the U.S. couldn't buy the island, they decided they would simply use it. In 1959, under the guise of climate research, the U.S. began constructing Camp Century. To the Danish government, it was presented as a harmless scientific outpost to study ice cores. In reality, it was the cover for Project Iceworm. The plan was as ingenious as it was terrifying. The U.S. military intended to build a massive network of 2,500 miles of tunnels hidden beneath the Greenland ice sheet. Inside these tunnels, 600 nuclear missiles would be mounted on trains, constantly moving so Soviet satellites could never pinpoint their location. It was meant to be an invisible, mobile nuclear launch pad capable of striking Moscow in minutes. They built a city under the ice. It had living quarters, a hospital, a chapel, and even a barber shop. It was powered by the world's first portable nuclear reactor. For 3 years, the Americans lived like moles in the frozen dark. But they forgot one thing. The ice moves. By 1963, the engineers realized they had underestimated the power of the Greenland ice sheet. The ice wasn't a static block. It shifted and compressed like a slow-motion ocean. The tunnels began to buckle. The walls groaned and collapsed. By 1967, Project Iceworm was abandoned. The Americans packed up their reactor, but left behind a toxic legacy. Thousands of gallons of chemicals and nuclear waste buried under layers of snow, waiting for the melt. The Danes didn't find out about the nuclear missiles until decades later. The revelation sparked fury, but it didn't change the power dynamic. America was in Greenland to stay. While Project Iceworm failed, another installation succeeded. Thule Air Base, now known as Pittafik Space Base, was established in 1951. Located 950 miles from the North Pole, it is one of the most vital military installations in the world. Thule sits directly in the path of any potential Russian missile launch. Its massive ballistic missile early warning system can detect a launch from deep within Eurasia in seconds. Today, it is a cornerstone of the U.S. Space Force's missile detection network. Technically, Thule is on Danish soil. In reality, it is an American fortress. The personnel are American, the equipment is American, and the commands come from Washington. Denmark has virtually no say in its daily operations. For 80 years, the U.S. has maintained this presence through agreements that require Danish consent. But as the world warms, the US is beginning to wonder if they can bypass that consent entirely. The geopolitical landscape is changing because the physical landscape is disappearing. Climate change is warming the Arctic twice as fast as the rest of the planet. As the ice melts, a frontier that has been closed for all of human history is opening up. The Arctic Ocean is becoming a highway. The northern sea route along Russia's coast and the Northwest Passage through Canada are becoming navigable. This isn't just a local change, it's a revolution in global trade. A ship traveling from Shanghai to Rotterdam via the Arctic can save weeks compared to the route through the Suez Canal. Whoever controls Greenland controls the choke points of these new oceans. Greenland is the unsinkable aircraft carrier that guards the Atlantic side of the Arctic. If the US controls Greenland, they control the future of global trade. But the true prize isn't just on the water, it's under the ground. Greenland's geology is a treasure chest. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates that the Arctic holds 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its natural gas. But in the 21st century, oil is yesterday's war. The new war is over rare earth elements. These minerals, neodymium, terbium, dysprosium, are the lifeblood of modern technology. They are in your smartphone, your wind turbines, and your F-35 fighter jets. Currently, China controls 60% of the mining and a staggering 90% of the processing of these minerals. They have a monopoly that allows them to hold Western technology hostage. Greenland could break that monopoly. The Quanafeld deposit in southern Greenland is one of the largest rare earth deposits outside of China. It also contains massive amounts of uranium, zinc, and copper. For 20 years, mining these resources was a fantasy because of the ice. But as the ice retreats, the minerals are being exposed. Mining that was impossible in 2000 is feasible today. In 20 years, it will be easy. America knows that if they don't secure these mines, China will. Washington's urgency isn't just about greed, it's about fear. In 2018, China made a bold move. They offered to build 3 major airports in Greenland. For a territory with a tiny population and almost no roads, this was a massive offer. The Pentagon panicked. The nightmare scenario for American strategists is a Chinese military facility in Greenland, a research station that actually houses sensors to track American submarines or jam American satellites. Under intense U.S. pressure, Denmark was forced to reject the Chinese offer and provide the funding themselves. But the threat remains. Chinese companies continue to pursue mining rights. Chinese icebreakers are mapping the seafloor. The Americans have realized that if they leave Greenland to Denmark, Denmark might eventually be outspent or outmaneuvered by Beijing. To the U.S., the only way to ensure Greenland stays in the Western fold is to take the keys themselves. If you can't buy it and you don't want to invade it yet, how do you take it? You make it dependent. In 2020, the United States opened a consulate in Nuuk, Greenland's capital, the first in decades. They didn't just bring diplomats, they brought a checkbook. The Pentagon began funding airports, harbors, and research stations. American companies began pouring money into mining ventures. Greenland is currently a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. It has its own parliament and handles domestic affairs, but Denmark provides a $500 million annual subsidy that makes up half of Greenland's budget. Without that money, Greenland collapses. The American strategy is transparent. If the U.S. can replace that $500 million subsidy with American investment and aid, Greenland will naturally gravitate toward Washington. If Greenland chooses to declare independence from Denmark, a dream many of the indigenous Inuit population share, they will find themselves instantly dependent on the United States for security and survival. The Danish flag would come down, but an American flag wouldn't need to go up. Greenland would be American in every way that matters. Lost in this game of grand strategy are the 56,000 people who actually live there. About 90% of Greenlanders are Inuit. Their history with Denmark is one of colonialism and cultural pain. Within living memory, Denmark forcibly relocated communities and separated children from their families to Danishize them. For many Greenlanders, independence is the ultimate goal, but they are wary. They don't want to trade Danish colonialism for American imperialism. They've seen what happened to other territories. America has a pattern. In 1893, American businessmen overthrew the Hawaiian monarchy. In 1903, the U.S. helped Panama break away from Colombia just to get the Canal Zone. In 1898, they took Puerto Rico as a prize of war. Greenlanders look at Puerto Rico, where people are U.S. citizens but cannot vote for president, and they see a cautionary tale. They want the American money, but they don't want to be an American possession. In 2024 and 2025, the conversation shifted from real estate to national security. Donald Trump, back in the White House, has intensified the rhetoric. When asked if he would rule out military force to secure Greenland, he refused to answer. This is unprecedented. Denmark is a founding member of NATO. Under Article 5, the U.S. is sworn to defend Denmark. But what happens when the protector becomes the predator? European leaders are in a state of quiet panic. If the U.S. can ignore the sovereignty of a NATO ally, the entire rules-based international order is dead. If might makes right is the new rule of the Atlantic, then the alliance that has kept the peace since 1945 is over. Denmark's military is capable, but tiny, only 15,000 active personnel. They cannot stop the U.S. militarily. Their only leverage is reputational cost. But for an administration focused on America first, the cost of a bad reputation might be a price they are willing to pay for the Saudi Arabia of minerals. How does this end? There are 4 likely paths the United States might take to finally secure its Arctic prize. Scenario 1. The purchase. The U.S. bypasses Denmark and negotiates directly with the Greenlandic Parliament. They offer a $50 billion independence package. Greenland holds a referendum. The people vote to leave Denmark and join an American Compact of Free Association. It's legal, democratic, and effective. Scenario 2. The squeeze. The U.S. continues its current path. They monopolize the economy and the infrastructure until Denmark's presence becomes a formality. Greenland becomes a de facto American protectorate without a single shot being fired. Scenario 3. The crisis. A security emergency is declared. Perhaps a Chinese spy ship is spotted, or terrorists threaten the Thule radar. The U.S. moves in thousands of troops to protect the island and simply never leaves. This is the Panama playbook. Scenario 4. The ultimatum. The U.S. tells Denmark, give us Greenland or we leave NATO and impose 50% tariffs on all Danish goods. Faced with total economic and security collapse, Denmark yields. For 80 years, Greenland was too cold to fight over. The ice was a shield that kept the world's greed at bay. But the shield is melting. America has wanted this island since the end of World War II. They've tried to buy it with gold, they've tried to undermine it with secret bases, and now they are trying to court it with billions in investment. The U.S. has never accepted no as a final answer when it comes to territory it deems essential. From the mountains of Puerto Rico to the shores of Hawaii, the pattern of American expansion is clear. Greenland is the final frontier of that expansion. The question is no longer if America will control Greenland. The question is how they will take it, and what the rest of the world will look like once the Arctic's greatest prize is finally in Washington's hands. As the ice turns to water, the Cold War is heating up, and this time there is no turning back.